Hi and welcome to the Girl Gone London travel channel, your ultimate guide to planning a stress-free trip to London and the UK. My name is Kalyn, I've lived in the UK for over 10 years, and today we're going over the major mistakes I see people making all the time in London and why you shouldn't do these things. Don't forget to check out the link in my description if you want a freebie downloadable guide to London, including some of my favorite places in London as well as more top London tips. Now, the first mistake is buying individual tickets for the tube. For many people, the days of buying individual paper tickets for each tube journey are long gone. But in case you're out of the loop and you didn't know, taking individual journeys via paper ticket on the tube is the most expensive way to travel. Do not do it. It is more than 50% cheaper to use an Oyster card or contactless card on the tube instead of a paper ticket. I have videos about tube travel and using Oyster cards, so you can check those out separately, but whatever you do, don't purchase a single or one-way or return round trip paper ticket for a tube ride unless you want to spend money needlessly. Mistake number 2, trying to get on a London bus with cash. You cannot purchase a ticket on a London bus. You must use either an Oyster card, a travel card, or a contactless credit or debit card to ride. Don't try and hand your cash to the driver in exchange for a ticket, because they're just gonna look at you funny and have to tell you the same thing I'm telling you now. You can buy an Oyster card or travel card from any London TfL tube station, and of course, your contactless credit or debit card is just the normal one you took to London with you, as long as it is contactless, which means it will have this symbol. Mistake number 3, trying to mess with the guards at Buckingham Palace or elsewhere in London. The King's Guards are soldiers on active duty outside places like Buckingham Palace, and while you might have seen tourists trying to make them laugh or interacting with them in some movies or social media, absolutely do not do this. You might have seen a few videos very recently on social media of some tourists getting told off, as they say in the UK, for this behavior, but it really is disrespectful. There is a long tradition behind these guards, and they are active military, not just props for photos. By all means, you can take photos if you want to from afar, but if you do find yourself passing them or up close to them, which is unlikely in some situations as they actually are behind the gates at Buckingham Palace, but they could be elsewhere in London, leave them alone. I cannot stress this one enough. Absolutely do not do this. The next mistake I feel like people always make in London is always taking the tube. So here's the thing. The tube is super easy to use. You cannot deny that, and I would never. I love the tube. You should use it. You should use it a lot, but don't always use it for every single journey. Give yourself the chance to see London in some other ways. Often it's faster to walk in between areas rather than take the tube, especially if you have to change lines. There's a really great London tube distance walking map that I'll also link below that shows you the time it takes to walk in between different stations. You can also take the London buses or a taxi, both of which will allow you to see the streets of London from above rather than below. I found personally that I didn't quite understand how London all linked up as a city until I actually started walking places or taking other forms of transportation besides the tube. Suddenly, I could actually picture the city in my head a lot better instead of just seeing one big underground map and popping up at different stations around the city. So take the tube, definitely, but try out a few other ways of getting around too. The next mistake is eating out in the Piccadilly Circus or Leicester Square area. When it comes to touristy, these are the main areas of London that you need to see, but should avoid for your meals. They're going to have the most touristy restaurants, which means lower quality usually, and there are lots of better places to eat than around these areas. I'm not saying that there is not a single restaurant worth going to in this general area, but as a whole, if you don't have anything booked and are walking around like looking for a pub, head a bit further away from here to places like Covent Garden. Covent Garden is a very popular area, and you'll find a lot more options for food here that isn't the Rainforest Cafe. Not that I'm hating on the Rainforest Cafe, because I definitely have been known to enjoy sitting in the gorilla room, listening to the sounds of fake thunderstorms. We're not above that here on this channel, but it's probably not what you want to do on your London vacation. Mistake number 6 is worrying about whether you're staying central. London is a large city. There are some cities in the world where it's easy to tell you to stay central or downtown or wherever all of the major attractions are, but London really isn't like that. 2 of the major things to see, as an example, are Westminster Abbey and the Tower of London. They're on completely different sides of the city. Stay close to one and you'll be staying a lot further from the other. I see people all the time worrying about if they're staying central, and I would say that you really only need to worry about staying central in the terms of staying within zone 1 on the London tube map. That is going to put you central in London, and that's a pretty wide area. So really you do have some leeway when it comes to finding a hotel that suits you best without worrying too much about how you're not going to be close to all the major attractions, because it is impossible to pick one place in London that is going to put you close to all of the attractions. Like I said, if you choose being closer to the Tower of London, you're further away from Westminster Abbey, from the Churchill War Rooms, from Big Ben, etc. And if you choose to be closer to those things, then the markets of East London, the Tower of London, Tower Bridge, St. Paul's, that's all going to be, kind of on the other side of the city. So don't stress too much about feeling like you have to stay in one particular area to be central. The next mistake is mixing up London Bridge and Tower Bridge. A lot of visitors think that this is actually called London Bridge. It's been mistakenly referred to that in the past, even by journalists who didn't do their research, but this is not London Bridge. This is Tower Bridge. It's one of the most famous bridges in all of Europe. This is London Bridge. It's famous for getting cars across the river. It's not that exciting and certainly not worth actually making a point to visit. Most people will know what you mean if you accidentally say London Bridge because they're so used to people getting it wrong, but not everyone will. So make sure you're referring to this beautiful bridge with the right name. Mistake number 8, getting fish and chips in a pub. I'm not actually advising entirely against this or saying that all fish and chips in a pub are bad, but the best fish and chips come from a chippy or a takeaway or take-out fish and chips place. There are plenty across London, and this is where you get truly authentic fish and chips. Mistake number 9, standing on the left of the tube escalator. When you are going up and down the escalators in the tube, this is not a free-for-all. Things are very orderly and there are signs to remind you, but the biggest thing to remember is stand on the right-hand side. If you stand on the left, you'll be in the way of all the people trying to pass you because they don't want to stand, they want to walk up or down the escalator and get to their destination faster. You don't have to walk up or down the escalator. You're more than welcome to stand, many people will, but if you do, stand on the right to let people pass on the left. Mistake number 10, thinking that Londoners are rude. Londoners definitely keep to themselves, as do most people in major cities. People won't strike up conversations with you randomly or smile at you as you walk past Big Ben, but I think it's a mistake to think that Londoners are rude. It's just a big city, and you kind of have to create your own bubble within that to avoid going crazy if you live here. If you do need to ask someone for directions, you typically will get a friendly response. It's a polite sort of culture here in the UK. They're usually not going to tell you to get lost, so if you do need directions, don't be afraid to approach someone who looks like they know what they're doing if you find yourself a little bit turned around. Now, the next mistake has to do with the travel to London, and it's not planning for jet lag. I've lived in the UK for over 10 years now, going back and forth between here and the USA, and I still am not used to jet lag. It hits me every time, and that first day after landing in the UK is always so difficult, as I don't sleep on a plane as a general rule. You want to try and stay awake as much as possible on day 1 and not give in to the jet lag, but that also means that you need to plan for it. So what am I saying? I'm saying don't book your most exciting tour that day or the one attraction you don't want to miss. You might be a little bit out of it physically and mentally, so you don't take those things in as much. I find that taking something like an open-top bus tour is a good way to take in London while dealing with the jet lag, but some people opt to leave the day fully free to just wander around. Something like a theater show in a dark theater, not a good idea. Fanciest meal of your trip in your best clothes, not a good idea. You'll probably want to be in your pajamas pretty early that night. You get the picture. Mistake number 12, visiting Madame Tussauds, the London Aquarium, or Shrek 4D. There are a lot of things to see in London, and even if you have a week or more, you still won't have time to see it all. So, take it from me. Don't spend any of your time at some of the more touristy London attractions like Madame Tussauds, like the London Aquarium. Go to an aquarium or Madame Tussauds in a city that has far less than London has to offer. Cross it off the list, skip it, go to the next thing. Mistake number 13, not understanding how global London really is. If you thought you're going to get to London and everyone will have a thick British accent and a top hat, you'd be very wrong. London is one of the most multicultural cities in the whole world, and you'll see people from all cultures and walks of life. This means that the food is also amazing. So many cuisines from around the world. London has some of the best Indian food, for example. You'll also hear a lot of different languages being spoken, and not just by tourists, but by Londoners who live and work in the city. Next up, paying for the view from the Shard if all you care about is just any view of London. Some people want to go do the Shard experience specifically, but if you're one of those people who just want a view of London and you don't really care where you get it, you don't need to pay the prices to go up the Shard. You can book free tickets to the Sky Garden, another fantastic view of London. You'll want to book in advance. They're released about 3 weeks ahead of time. Tickets do go quickly, but this is a much cheaper way to get a nice view from above if you don't have any particular attachment to the Shard. Now, the last mistake I wanted to mention was wearing or packing rain boots. It does rain a lot in London, maybe not as much as you might think. This statistic gets paraded around a lot that actually it rains more in places that you wouldn't expect than London, but it does rain a lot in London, and to some people, this means that they should pack or wear their rain boots. To which I say, do not do this. Waterproof shoes are one thing. Rain boots, that's another. Your feet will kill you after all of the time you'll spend walking in rain boots in London. You'll look really out of place, and also the type of rain that we get here is usually more of a drizzle that goes off and on, not really rain boot type weather. Instead, wear your most comfortable shoes, bonus points if they're waterproof, a solid pair of waterproof tennis shoes or hiking shoes that you've broken in. Yes. Rain boots, no. Now, with 15 items in this list, I'm going to end there because I don't want to completely overwhelm you with this information. That's not the intention, but I hope you found this useful when it comes to planning your London trip and knowing what to expect. As always, feel free to leave any questions in the comments below, and safe travels to the UK.